It was.
It was. Here's an image of it. The construct itself is just a machine that's constantly mopping, or rather, just pushing back all the blood that's coming out of itself, or oil, blood, whatever. And there's so much to draw out of this. You watch it as it's just desperately trying to get the blood back in / oil, and it just keeps coming back out. I think it ran for like a year or something, and people just watched it, and they would think about what this thing evokes. And I understand that, and I appreciate it, and there's work that went into the creation of this thing, and holy moly.
It moves, it's striking. I mean, the blood on the floor, this concept of, is that what we are? We're constantly trying to clean up our own messes. Is life futile? All sorts of things you could draw from it. And that's like, oh, that's interesting. That's neat.
One must imagine the robot happy.
A few minutes before that, Mahler said something about, he basically phrased it like, modern art has kind of crossed this Rubicon where it's basically laughed at now. Like, there's enough people who laugh at modern art to where it's almost like an unrecovered. It's like the Bud Light of art now. You know what I'm saying? And I think there's an organized attack on it too, or at least a sort of standalone complex. I mean, people have been shitting on the modern stuff for a while now, but only in certain parts. And see, what I went through art school in the fucking late 90s, early 2000s. I dropped out 2 years into it because it was fucking preposterous. It was and some of it, I guess, is my own issues, right? But after the trauma, this trauma, I'll get into stories and shit, but it was horrible, and you're basically, it's like the kind of mind fuck people are kind of like, they're on to the left now. Like, we get where it's coming from. It's like the Bay Area liberal mind fuck, and I think because it's like connection to God knows what organizations and pools of money or whatever, funding sources, that this shit, it's probably down to a science, right? Where this culture like breaks you of your preconceptions and then uses like massive social sanctions, which this video, this guy fits it to a T. The one that looks like a lesbian chick. But it's a dude who came from art school who literally throughout this whole fucking video has nothing to really say about art. Like, doesn't know a thing. Like, dude, I need to see this guy's fucking sketchbook. Show me one sketchbook and then we can talk. Okay? So I haven't checked out his channel. Maybe he has good stuff. I was actually surprised, one, at how much I end up defending modern art. And I'm going to shred some shit here, right? Or at least, like, give him something to think about. Hopefully it gives me something to think about, and I watch Efap all the time. I love these fucking guys. And I'm very willing to like laugh at modern art with the rest of the world, but I also think people need to understand the legit lessons of modern art as well. And so I just set up my shit and I want to record it, and I've been like watching it for a couple days now, and I'm like, I got to do a video of this, and like the inspiration took me, and I was like change out of the bathrobe. I'm like, fuck you. I need to pace around and think and rant at that screen and that screen, and I put some shit up, and like in my other videos you can see like it's some of the same stuff. But I'm just gonna do some commentary on this stuff, man. Cause I've been pacing around here talking to myself about it anyway, so I might as well just lay it down, right? But I was changing the subject. In the Bay Area, and here's the funny thing, is when I was in art school, there were a bunch of like old dog teachers, right? These were teachers who would have been, this is like late 90s, okay? these guys would have been in their fucking prime, in the pinnacle of like Western, American led like Western civilization. They would have been in their career peaks, in the peaks of our civilization, right? Which if you, depending on who you listen to, I'm thinking like Peter Thiel at least, and some others. I almost want to say Jordan Peterson, but it's Jordan Greenhall. Very much not Jordan Peterson, but highly intelligent. Anyway, those guys they'll peg it around the 70s, like, and I'm a 90s kid, and I would have thought 80s, 90s, right? Because 90s seem, but no, you can actually, and the thinking I've been doing the last maybe 5-8 years. I think the 90s, depending on who you're listening to, the 90s are the first visible signs of like major decline, right? And this is also, I think, when the sort of social programs that were actually intended to damage the psychology of people as some kind of weird defense mechanism. I don't know, but this is the turning point where the culture became openly hostile to some of its own elements, which I believe it's less a sign of evil or whatever, and more a sign of actual decline and the actual creeping in of the jungle. The jungle's breaking into the garden, so to speak. The cracks are beginning to appear, that kind of shit. I went to art school when everyone still took the mainstream seriously, as if there was something really going on, and that there wasn't a common understanding even of like what modern art was, even though like in the 80s it started being understood. I mean, you can go back to the 70s where you have like Ziggy Stardust, and you have Andy Warhol, and you have the people who were part of modern pop, even fucking Dolly, man. They're actually part of pop culture, but fine art. They don't talk about this at all in Efap. That you guys talk pop culture and shit. Remember, like from Yoko Ono to Ziggy Stardust to like John Lennon and the Maharaja, whatever, like funny shit was going on. Even the transcendentalism, the spiritualism was was very tied to the fine art, and which is to say like the real heady modern art, right? And this is when you've had all sorts of progressions of very legitimate modern art that we'll get into, right? Very legitimate modern art, but also you start seeing, or you see a pretty advanced state of development of pop art, right? And then whatever the fuck, I mean, Andy Warhol is pop art, but there's a type of transcendentalist that like Yoko Ono will say, only because I just saw a Danks video and he shits on Yoko Ono a little bit, but it's actually the perfect avatar. She is the perfect avatar of bullshit modern art. Even if she's legit, which you can just be a troll and be legit, but it's kind of like the internet. It's like you actually kind of have to be funny, like the dude who ate the banana. Dank talked about this, but this is well, he talks about Duchamp first, Dank, and it's not in this, but we should talk about Duchamp because he's standard. He's talked about a lot. He in art school, you don't really talk about the games. You talk about politics a little bit. There's no football, not much politics. Like no one wants to watch the fucking television, and the people are literally like they're talking about like Duchamp and shit like that. And and Picasso, and like, is it real? Is it art? Like the whole conversation of like, how legit is this shit? How real is art? How real is modern art? What can you learn from it? That actually happens, and there's a lot, which surprises me that this fucking guy on this video has nothing. He says shit throughout the whole thing. So he's one of the cultural attack dogs, right? And you run into these people in art school, but even then they were smarter back in the day. But remember, I started this whole diatribe talking about the old dogs in art school, like your professors who were at peak career when the US led culture was at peak culture, right? And even the level of like modern art fucking nonsense that was at art school in the late 90s, it blew the minds of these legit like old school old dog, like the kind of, oh my god, the kind of dudes who like actually know how to physically color correct and like understand, they can line up linotype or like dot presses, or they, oh my god, like they're taking photo emulsions of images, so they have to put their illustrations through drums and shit, like old school peak. I mean, if you're looking this in terms of like Jordan Greenhall stuff, this is peak central broadcast messaging, right? And these guys were like masters of the analog broadcast media technology. And when they hear the kind of bullshit that modern art had become, even the old dogs who were teaching this shit, it blew their mind. It blew their mind. Because in the Bay Area, for some fucking reason, these crazy ideas were coming from somewhere. And I remember being a student in art school, and these people, they came from high school art programs, and they knew all the rhetoric. And they're ready, and there was the students who were ready with the rhetoric, like why do you make art? And I'm like, because I'm good at it, and people like it, and I want to do it for a career. And they're like, you do it for other people? This is a legit first year of art school, first just meet and greet where everyone's getting together and pretending like anyone has any culture or whatever at 19 years old. Like we haven't started, now anyway. And there's people from high schools in the Bay Area who already know what fucking art is. And they're like, you make it for other people? It's you gotta make art for yourself. It's for you, And it's like, I actually honestly never really considered why I make art. It's just kind of obvious. It's like, I'm good at it, so I pursue what I'm good at. And the whole goal is to get as good as possible, learn as much from like history as possible, and just fucking do it. Just, and you can explore ideas with it. You can take, I read tons of books too. And I just never thought about some like self-indulgent art process. Like you're discovering something about yourself. It's like, no, I want to knock out like a piece of artwork that no one else even the good art students like know that when you drop that shit on the ground, like you're the guy, you're the one. You know what I'm saying? It's competitive. And then, of course they then, drop something later and it's like match that. And you're like, oh shit, and so it's the competitive nature of it's not a sport, but it's a field, and you're an artist because that's just what you're good at. That's what you started doing. You're in your own area. You have some instruction, but then you also have some like a burning desire in and of yourself to like find the cool stuff to draw and incorporate. You're pulling from the culture, and you are competing with other people who are kind of in the same space as you. And like the whole point is, I'm gonna be the shit. I'm gonna be the one, right? And so that was just how it was in high school. And then you go in art school, and it's like, no. Like, you draw well? What a fucking fat, I don't know. I can't say that. But they actually, I was amazed in the Bay Area that people couldn't draw. But then you have the professors there that are like, you want to learn how to draw classically? Like, yeah, what the fuck is going on at this school? They're like, oh yeah, yeah. So the art school I went to, in the 70s, they took all the classical plasters. I should let my cat in. She's fine. It's not cold or anything. She's just in heat, and she's just complaining. So it's nothing weird. Okay. They took all the plasters, which are like figures and hands and heads and face and busts and whatever, that they would teach classical art with back in, this is, and in the 70s, when all the cool artsy fartsy bullshit, the abstract expressionism, whatever, and it's probably mostly like big time abstract expressionism and probably some it's actually commercial art, but you could call it like pop art, right? Anyway, they'd thrown all the plaster busts into some fucking lake. Okay? And lo and behold, 20 years later, 25 years later, or whatever it was, no one can fucking draw. And it's in the culture that, like, only some people can draw. And they're actually seriously considering doing away with, this is in the late 90s, they were considering doing away with basic drawing as a requisite for art school, right? And this is like right before all the internet stuff came, so it was already hanging on by a thread, and this was like the last vestiges of classical art, right? Before the internet took over it, and so that takeover looked like called stock art and stock photography just taking over. They were already experimenting with it, but it was all analog. Like, you still had to call a place and you still had to secure rights and everything like that. It was only a couple of years until it became entirely online or something like that. And it just decimated everything. And like this new AI shit's just gonna put the final nail in illustration and photo reference and like whatever the hell. Like, it's done. Keep in mind, I think we just went through one of the most sophisticated era of illustration the world has ever seen. Video game concept art as a body of work which was produced by a culture is one of the grandest achievements of art that has ever taken place. You have people who can bust out Rembrandts on a lunch break. Dude, that's no shit. But anyway, that's the intro. That's why we're here. We're gonna talk about all this shit, right?
I like the banana duct tape wall.
Oh, well, that's not a good start.
Oh no, the banana duct tape wall is shit.
But is it not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
But it's
I'm happy to
shit
concede that.
art.
But yeah, I would be like, this
I
is.
think it's super lame.
I do not find it appealing.
I mean, this then gets into how much people value like perceived hard work when it comes to art, which I would say most people value a lot.
God, this one's complicated because if we were all doing a presentation in, like, let's say college or whatever, and everyone's working really hard, some guy comes in late and drunk, he's been partying, he hasn't done any work, and he's got a banana, and he's like, fuck, and he puts it on the wall, goes, there we are, and then like the
Look
teacher's
at me,
like,
I'm Rembrandt.
this is incredible. The guy's like, yeah, awesome.
What I was going to ask, I hope this won't take too long, and maybe it's something that this guy's going to cover, but the banana on the wall has intent. If you remove the intent, and we're just talking, someone has dropped the banana peel on the ground, and then the other people in the art exhibit it, they think it's a piece of art, but it no longer has the intent. Does that affect whether or not you guys would consider it to be artistic?
I think, drop the banana, and in the hoity-toity fancy modern art exhibition, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, it means so much, I can't believe, oh my gosh, wow, this is so unsafe for go-karting.
So we're at 44 minutes. They're finally starting to talk about the banana duct tape to the wall. I just realized when Dank was talking about it that every story I've heard circulating has like the banana on the wall. Can you fucking believe that? And then someone came up and ate it. And that's the whole story. That's going to last forever. Duchamp would be proud. That will last forever. That's not modern art, motherfucker. That's a meme. That's a meme. And the reason why it's a meme is because it's a complete story now. Do you know the intention? Do you know why they put it up there? It's ridiculous. They can't possibly think it would last. To maintain the piece, say, over time, would be to continuously replace the banana and it's going to be ridiculous, right? But the fact the story has the guy who walks up and eats it, it's complete. It's like a phrase. It's like, subject predicate, like noun verb, right? It's a complete thing, and now it means something because this sort of conceptual loop was completed. Someone just came up and fucking ate it. Is it art? It's better. It's a meme.
What I was going to ask, I hope this won't take too long, and maybe it's something that this guy's going to cover, but the banana on the wall has intent. If you remove the intent, and we're just talking, someone has dropped the banana peel on the ground, and then the other people in the art exhibit it, they think it's a piece of art, but it no longer has the intent. Does that affect whether or not you guys would consider it to be artistic?
People are by no means excluded from being able to draw out whatever meanings and things that they want to from something, in the same way that I've been moved to tears by landscapes.
I mentioned it before, I shall again, that one of my most memorable and favorite moments of all time in life was moving through many rooms in a big old gallery exhibition-y thing. Plenty of awesome things, plenty of things that made me think, and between two rooms, a little room, fire extinguisher in the corner, 5 people watching it, looking at it, very curious, thinking about it. And I was looking at it for a little bit, and then I was like, I don't think that's I think that's just a fire extinguisher. I think that is actually just a fire extinguisher in the floor, in the corner, that's meant there for safety. And
so this weird analogy came to mind the first time I watched this, because these guys always get to a place in analyzing a concept. They essentially hit what I would call like a frame, right? Where at a certain point you have to get to some bedrock of an argument where you can actually frame something coherent, right? And in this case, what that means is they just said it, but they elaborate on it more. That the minute someone says it's art, your brain clicks and you actually start looking for new things and getting different, looking at possible meanings or anything, right? But if you don't know, you'd walk right by it, right? And I knew a dude who his name was Z. We'll talk about Z a little bit later, but he was the kind of artist who got no money, legit psychological issues, dirt poor, and was lived this shit. And he is the kind of guy that would spend hours sculpting something from trash that looked like trash until you really looked at it and you realized that it was an extremely exquisite arrangement of cardboard and little tears and little pieces of found like rubble or a rock, and it's this little assemblage that you would never notice, and that if for some fucking reason you were walking around and you sat down to have a sip of coffee, sip from your coffee or whatever out in the city, and you look down, you'd look away and you'd look back and say, wait, what the fuck? And you'd see this thing that you thought was trash on the ground, and you'd look at it closely and realized it was a piece of jewelry, right? That's Z. That's the kind of shit Z did. And I have a couple of his sketches. He tagged. I met him through like the sort of tagging graffiti circuit back in the day, right? Which was like a very late 90s, early 2000s thing. And hip hop was the next, and you can talk about modern art all you want, to give a shit. It hasn't been and wasn't nearly as relevant as hip hop in the late 90s, early 2000s. And hip hop had it had music, dance, visual art, and all sorts of, like you just heard, levels of abstraction that were taken off of it as well. It had the complete cultural package. It's the real deal. Hip hop was real. And this shit they're talking about, this shit was real like in the 70s. And it's not anymore. And a lot of what I think the issues are a kind of scrambling kind of irrelevance. And I think now that the fact that people just openly shit on it now, I think it's even funnier, right? But that doesn't mean there's not lessons. We'll get to it. There's good stuff. Now, the analogy that came to my mind was, okay, so imagine you have a picture that's made up of like strips of paper, right? Like you took an image that's like a line drawing of a horse and you cut it into strips, right? And you pull out that one strip of the middle of the horse where it's just a line on the top and a line on the bottom, right? And if you were to ask someone, what is this? They'd say it could be anything. Like, this is a picture. It makes a picture. What is this a picture of? Once you assemble it all, I have no idea. Then you get the end that's like the nostril of the horse. They would recognize it and say, oh, it's a horse. I get it. And the whole picture they can fill in their mind, right? A work of modern art is like showing them that first thing that you have no idea what it is. But then the minute you show them that other piece, it's art. It's that phrase, right? And then you can connect it. They need to say it, or it needs to be said. It's a spell. It's fucking weird. Like, okay. And then people can actually get the joke, right? It's the cat and heat. If there's a joke, they'll look for the joke. If it's this or that. And honestly, it's just like anything else. Most of it's shit. There's a thin layer on the top that's really good. And then the stuff that's at the very top is timeless. Okay? I think the fucking banana is going to be timeless because it's a story. And it so perfectly encapsulates how preposterous this whole modern art thing became, past tense, that upon completing the story when it was eaten by it is so easily transmittable, that story. It encompasses, it's the whole fucking tamale. That doesn't mean you can't say, hey, show me the best. We'll talk about some good modern art here. Fuck, dude, is there good modern art? And then there's stuff that makes you think. And then there's stuff that's, okay. Then it fragments into all these categories. And within a category, you can start talking about it, right? And that's like music, if you want. Like, that gets it. You can go as far down the rabbit hole of any one of these categories as you want. And in this video, it's kept very surface. This is like, a lot of it's like kind of greatest hits, super easy. It still blows me away that EFAP guys are taking their cue from this fucking guy, and he hasn't said the whole video. He didn't show any actual artistic insight. Blows my mind. But anyway, these guys are, EFAP, they're not artists. Like, art isn't their world, right? So they're kind of taking their cue from this guy, and then later the penguin. But it's like people commenting on people who don't know, and EFAP, they just run it through the fucking computer. They just take it apart and analyze, which is great. So there's no criticism here of EFAP at all. I'm just using it as a platform to like expand on these ideas, because they bring up questions, and they bring up some things that are like misunderstanding, is they're just like just devouring this guy's fucking video. and I figured, like, somewhere in there needs to be some insight, man, because this fucking dude does not make a good case for modern art. So let's make a decent case for it, and then also why they're basically exactly right, because I love EFAP. I love these guys. So